Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We're back with Beyond Ground Zero, the other good half, Darin Harvey. Hey, Darin, hey, good to see you, pal. What's going on?
Hey Adam, how you doing, man? Great to see you again.
The last time we did this was 2 weeks ago, and this is something that we agreed to do every 2 weeks. There's a collab session, a breakdown of videos and whatnot relating to 9/11. And we started with Ali Soufan and the
hmm
interrogator for 60 minutes. Well, this week, we're going to be doing a much more nefarious topic relating to 9/11 after. And it's the CIA's enhanced interrogation program. And this was the first CIA official that ever came out regarding the program itself, and Jose Rodriguez, who's the director of the clandestine services.
hmm
So, without further ado,
Before
here we
you before you started, Adam,
sure.
no, just want to point out is people are probably asking why you guys talking about this, how does this relate to 9/11? It's actually really important. The torture and how it wasn't as effective as they let it on to be. And we'll get into that more here, but the enhanced interrogation thing it's very important to know and the torture and regarding the suspects here.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought this up because what was elicited from torture, whether it's true or not, can't be used
Right.
in a court of law. This
Exactly.
is the problem. We haven't had a trial, Darren. And
Yep.
who's to blame? Well, the CIA, the state, the Bush White House officials that signed off on this uh,
Exactly.
program. And right now, Carol Rosenberg of the New York Times, she's
Yep.
down in Guantanamo reporting on this, along with with lawyer Al Pradham, and they're basically coming back saying that James Mitchell, who is one of the CIA program founders of the SEAL program, basically is still defending the program, even though it has been an abject failure in every regard, Darren.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so without further ado, here we go.
After the attacks of 9/11, the
I'll turn up
CIA
the
sought
sound.
and was granted unprecedented authority to capture al Qaeda suspects, whisk them off to secret sites, and interrogate them with harsh techniques, including waterboarding. The man who ran the interrogation program was Jose Rodriguez, a CIA spy in Latin America who rose to become head of the Clandestine Service, the CIA's dark side. When the agency's secret program was revealed, it was widely criticized. But the blunt-spoken, Puerto Rican-born Rodriguez is fighting back. He's written a book, a defense of the interrogations called Hard Measures. And tonight you will hear his side of the story. It's the first time someone this close to the program, this accountable, has gone public, explaining why techniques that had long been condemned by the U.S. as torture were employed.
I
The
even got the
story
I even
will
got the
continue in a
60 minutes
moment.
clock in
For the first time in our history, we had an enemy come into our homeland and kill 3,000 people. I mean, that was a huge deal. People jumping from the towers to their death, the people running away from the cloud of
Hey,
dust.
Adam, can you stop it real
there.
quick?
Yeah, for
This
sure.
was
Well, he's already wrong because if he remembers in 1993, they killed people in the World Trade Center and people died. So this
Right.
wasn't the first attack on Seoul. So he's already wrong already.
Right, he's off to a bad
He's
start
off to
here
a bad start.
already, man. And not only that, by the way, if the CIA had actually shared information with the FBI and the State Department about two known Al Qaeda operatives that were traveling from a summit meeting in Malaysia to the
Yep.
United States, we wouldn't be having this problem, Jose.
Nope.
So that, on top of that,
a threat, and we had to throw everything at it.
Which is why Jose Rodriguez says that when he ran the CIA's counterterrorist center, he came up with the idea of employing harsh interrogation techniques. And 10 years later, he feels he still has to justify their use. You had no qualms. We used to consider some of them war crimes.
We made some Al Qaeda terrorists with American blood on their hands uncomfortable for a few days, but we did the right thing for the right reason. And the right reason was to protect the homeland and to protect American lives. So, yes, I had no qualms.
Rodriguez spent 31 years in the CIA's clandestine service, where spies are revered as fighter jocks. He rose through the ranks, eventually running covert operations as head of the Latin America division. When al-Qaeda struck on 9/11, he had had no experience in counterterrorism or the Middle East, but he wanted in on the war on terror and went to the CIA's Counterterrorist Center, where the main objective was to stop another attack on the U.S. homeland.
We were flooded with intelligence about an imminent attack, that Al-Qaeda had an anthrax program, and that they were planning to use it against us, and that they were...
Already, that's wrong. This was disproven, even from State Department officials, that Al-Qaeda was not procuring anthrax or chemical weapons. And this is coming from the torture of Sheikh Ibn al-Libi. Now, Sheikh Ibn al-Libi is a Libyan terrorist, basically was captured by Egyptian authorities while he was in Egypt. CIA basically renditioned him to Cairo to have him tortured. And with CIA questioning, Egyptians were torturing. Now, at this time, the CIA didn't have the torture program. That's why they sent him to Cairo, Egypt. And while there, he basically gave Egyptian authorities information they wanted to hear. And what they want to hear, that Iraq was procuring chemical weapons with the Al-Qaeda. By the way, that information went to the Secretary of State, Darin Powell, which he gave a speech at the United Nations. And
Yes, his little,
went to war with Iraq.
he sure did his little cartoon mobile labs showing the, them taking, So again, we're off to another bad start. More lies in this piece that unfortunately a lot of people do believe, because if you read the comments in the 60 Minutes piece here, people are like, yeah, he had to do this, great job, all this stuff. So yeah, like I said, it's already, we're 2 minutes in, he already has multiple lies. So
yeah, but he's got to. I mean, what was he going to tell the truth? Really?
Exactly.
Seeking nuclear materials to use in some type of nuclear weapon. So we were facing a ticking time bomb situation, and we were very concerned.
So you were getting pressure from Congress and the White House to take the gloves off. Did you go to the dark side?
Well, the dark side, that's what we do.
You are the dark side.
We are the dark side, yes.
His first big operation came after the capture of a Palestinian, thought then to have high-level al-Qaeda connections, named Abu Zubaydah. When he was taken prisoner in Pakistan in the spring of 2002, Abu Zubaydah was badly injured in a firefight.
He actually was on the verge of dying when we brought in a surgeon from the U.S. to help him out.
You brought in a top-rate surgeon from Johns Hopkins.
Yes, the best that we could find.
You save him so you can squeeze everything out of his brain that you can.
So we could elicit intelligence that would allow us to keep our country safe. So we took him to a black site.
Black Site. It was the first of several secret interrogation centers around the world. Abu Zubaydah was still recovering from his gunshot wounds when the interrogation began. When you start the interrogation, it's both the CIA and the FBI, right?
Correct. This was our prisoner, our site,
meaning CIA?
Our show, CIA, but we had invited the FBI to come along.
Now there's a big dispute over which agency got more information and more valuable information. At first, FBI interrogators used their standard interviewing techniques with no coercion, and Abu Zubaydah cooperated, giving tips and leads. But
after he regains his strength, he stopped talking.
And then he just shuts down? Is that what happened?
He shuts down.
But the FBI's lead interrogator says he didn't shut down. And he argued at the time that they should continue with the FBI's traditional methods of questioning. Rodriguez, though, heard the ticking time bomb and felt a sense of urgency.
Yeah, sure.
So this goes back to the whole Eli Soufan video we did 2 weeks ago. So Eli Soufan was the one that was questioning Zubaydah.
Right.
He actually got information from him without torture. He was, like I said, he was putting ice chips to his lips. He was tending to him. He made him feel comfortable, like he could trust Soufan. And he was able to get the Mukhtar information about KSM being one of the masterminds of the so-called masterminds of 9/11. He also got about Jose Padilla, the dirty bomber who came through Chicago. So he was able to get information. But what happened is George Tenet got pissed. He found out that Soufan was getting this information, and he said, "Oh hell no." He sent his guys and he said, "Tell them to stop talking. Let the CIA take over." This is what Jose's talking about. He didn't shut down. That's another lie. He shut down because the CIA came in and started doing their torturing. So again, here's the lies we're talking about regarding the FBI and the CIA and the whole sharing of information. It goes down back to torture. It's all lies. As we can see, the CIA was trying to cover their butts. They know they screwed up, so they had to take over these torture these tactics they had to do because they didn't want these guys talking. They wanted to be the ones that had the information. This is why they destroyed tapes and all this stuff, all the evidence, because they're the ones that screwed up.
That's a bingo. By the way, I don't know, Darin, if you could see this. I just pull up a can you see this, by the way?
No.
No? Okay, I have to do a new share. So what I pulled up is so this is from the
Oh, yeah.
Select Committee Intelligence Report that was released in 2016. And this is contradicting to what Jose Rodriguez said. Now we'll disappear for a minute so people can read it. And Darin goes right into what you just brought up. And I'm so glad you brought this up because this led right into what I wanted to talk about, which was the FBI officers are the first to question Abu Zubaydah, who states he intends to cooperate. That's opposite to what Darin just said, which was Jose Rodriguez was lying about the whole idea that Abu Zubaydah shut down. Zubaydah never shut down. And as also what you just said was that it was Ali Soufan from the FBI who basically got Zubaydah to start talking.
Yep.
And as you can see here, Abu Zubaydah is taken to a hospital. He provides information the CIA later describes as important and vital. This report is coming from Daniel Jones. If you haven't seen the movie, The Report, go watch it. Adam Driver plays Daniel Jones and did a damn good job.
Fantastic movie.
Here, right here, it says after Abu Zubaydah was rendered to detention site green. Now, of course, Darin, I'm going to follow up on what you said, was that afterwards, CIA Director George Tenet went to Bush and basically wanted to take over Zubaydah, and they did. And this is coming from here now. After Zubaydah was rendered to detention site green in March of 2002, he was questioned by special agents from the FBI. Now, why is this surreal? Because for years, Darin, the FBI claimed that they were not involved with the CIA's physical torture of these people. That's true. But however, the FBI did cover up the fact that they provided the questions to the CIA in regards to the torture. So that means they were a part of it, but they weren't torturing these people. And one agent who spoke Arabic, this is Ali Soufan, and had experience interrogating members of Al-Qaeda. Abu Zubaydah confirmed his identity to the FBI officers, informed the FBI officers he wanted to cooperate. By the way, again, that's not shutting down, and provided background information on his activities. Now, during on April 2002 debriefing session conducted in the hospital's intensive care unit, Abu Zubaydah revealed to the FBI officers, Ali Soufan, that a person named Mukhtar was the Al-Qaeda mastermind. And from there, as you can see, the report says a review of the CIA's records found that this information was corroborative of information already in CIA databases. If it was already in CIA databases, that means they're admitting also, incidentally enough, that they're admitting that information was never shared to the FBI about Mukhtar. So that tells you right there that the CIA lies so much they can't keep up with all the lies that they're doing.
Right. Exactly. And this boils down to what we've always talked about in the turf war battle.
Yes.
Again, this is when Tenet didn't want the FBI to get credit for it. He wanted his CIA guys to get the credit for this.
That's correct.
There was going to be another attack against the U.S. We would have blood in our hands because we would not have been able to extract that information from him. So we started to talk about an alternative set of interrogation procedures.
So you're the one who went looking for something to break this guy.
Yes, and let me tell you something, because years later, the 9/11 Commission accused or said that 9/11 was a failure of imagination. Well, there was no lack of imagination on the part of the CIA in June 2002. We were looking for different ways of doing this.
His search led him to a former military psychologist who had helped train American soldiers in how to resist torture if they
By the way, just to add, the psychologist talking about is Dr. Bruce Jessen and James Mitchell.
They were captured. The psychologist adapted the brutal tactics of our Cold War adversaries into what the CIA called enhanced interrogation techniques. A team of interrogators, about 6 of them, was given a 2-week training course. And while Rodriguez himself never engaged in any of the sessions with detainees, he supervised the program. Did the psychologist, did he tell you how long it was going to take, if you use these techniques, to break Abu Zubaydah and anybody else that you might capture?
You know, he had speculated that within 30 days we would probably be able to get the information.
Adam, can you stop it real quick?
Yeah, sure.
But before moving...
So the two doctors are talking about, like you said, was James Mitchell, Bruce Jessen. These guys had absolutely no prior training
Right.
in this at all regarding Middle East terrorism, how to talk to them, their their culture, the way they went around themselves. They had no training in that whatsoever. The CIA gave them $81 million of taxpayers' money to do this. They had no background. I think Mitchell had training. I think he has a PhD in how to with your hypertension to control it with diet and exercise. and I think Justin's was like something to do with teachers report with teaching. So these guys had absolutely no background in Middle Eastern terrorism. Knew nothing about Wahhabism, what Salafi is, all that stuff. They had no idea what they were dealing with. These guys had no clinical training regarding this. So this is another black guy with the CIA.
Wow, it's such a great point you raised, Darin, because it relates to the difference between the FBI's New York field office, which had experience with Arab fundamentalism, as opposed to the CIA analysts who are basically, doing field work and in charge of these programs like the SEER program, the Enhanced Interrogation Program. Look, if you can't empathize with your enemy, that means you have no understanding of the enemy and you don't know what you're doing. And that's exactly what's going on here. And plus, you talk about Jose Rodriguez lying about Abu Zubaydah. That's just the tip of the iceberg. You're talking about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ramzi bin Al-Shib, Mustafa al-Sawi. I could go right down the line, man. The difference is that when you had earlier fundamentalists like Ramzi Youssef and what's his name? Abdul Hakim Murad, thank you. You didn't have to torture these guys. They're willing to tell you what they were doing, right? I mean, that's the whole difference. And the FBI was involved with that too. So after 9/11, it makes you wonder, why the hell would they even torture these people if they're willing to talk? Because even the CIA's own Inspector General report, which they're going to bring up here in a minute, even contradicts what Jose Rodriguez is even saying. And listen to what he says about that.
Rodriguez got his superiors, right up to the president, to sign off on a set of those techniques, including waterboarding.
Yes, and let me also bring this because it's really important. Nobody talks about this, right? In November of 2001, White House legal counsel like Alberto Gonzalez, Cheney's own personal lawyer, Attenborough, John Yoo, they told George Bush and Vice President Cheney that they need to circumvent the Geneva Convention, which afforded rights to foreign enemy combatants. So what they did was, foreign enemy combatants no longer are, they're not considered American citizens. So the Geneva Convention doesn't apply to them. So they found a loophole. And so they said the Geneva Convention does now not apply to enemy foreign combatants, which, by the way, was labeled by who, Darin? The Department of Justice, the FBI. They're the ones who were in charge of saying, hey, this guy's a terrorist, right? No longer. Because what the White House legal counsel also did was said, well, no longer that power doesn't belong to the Department of Justice, and now belongs to the President of the United States. So that gave one man the power to design who's an enemy combatant and who isn't. All right. That's dangerous. One person. Right. So that's where this authorization came from regarding enhanced interrogation techniques methods.
Get everybody in government to put their big boy pants on and provide the authorities that we needed.
The big boy pants on.
Big boy pants. Let me tell you, I had a lot of experience in the agency where we had been left to hold the bag, and I was not about to let that happen for the people that work for me.
There wasn't going to be any deniability on this one.
There was not going to be any deniability, and I tell you something, in August of 2002, I felt I had all the authorities that I needed, all the approvals that I needed. the atmosphere in the country was different. Everybody wanted us to save American lives.
The authorities came from the Justice Department in an opinion later dubbed one of the torture memos that detailed what was permissible.
We went to the
From the Office of Legal
border
Counsel.
of legality.
Yeah.
We went to the border that was within legal bounds.
Even after you got the Justice Department legal office to give you this okay, you kept going back and back with each thing you did over and over.
We wanted to make sure that the rest of government was with us.
How does the waterboarding that you engaged in, how did that work?
The detainee was strapped to an inclined board with his feet up so that no water would go.
His head was back.
So his head was back, and a cloth was placed over the mouth and the nose, and water was applied.
He couldn't
to
breathe
it.
through his nose.
So when it was saturated, then the air flow would be stopped,
And he'd have the sensation of drowning.
and he would have the sensation.
Was he naked?
In many cases, nudity was used extensively, and it worked well.
Why is nudity effective?
It is effective because a lot of people feel very vulnerable when they're nude, and also because of the culture. Nudity is not something that is common.
Each step they took was specifically spelled out in the Justice Department memo. For instance, uncooperative detainees could be put in a small, dark, cramped confinement box with an
Beta.
insect in it.
Yeah.
As for waterboarding, the interrogators were allowed to pour water for up to 40 seconds at a time, quote, applied from a height of 12 to 24 inches, using about a liter of water per session. Oh, you had rules for each thing?
Yes, we had rules, and not only that, but every time we did any of this, we had to ask permission. The field had to ask permission of headquarters.
Each time?
Each time.
Each single time. After Abu Zubaydah was subjected to the CIA's menu of interrogation techniques, Rodriguez says he became compliant in less than 3 weeks. Was it waterboarding that broke the dam with Abu Zubaydah?
I think he was more taken aback by the insult slap.
Oh, what's the insult slap?
It's just slapping somebody with an open hand so that you don't hurt him.
By hurt, you mean you don't break his jaw.
We don't break his jaw, and the objective is not to inflict pain. That's not the objective.
Fuck you. Hey, you're lying now, man. Straight up. Listen, what we and many we're talking about, armchair quarterback here, because in 2023, last year, one of the 5 co-conspirators for the planning of the 9/11 attacks, Ramzi bin Ashib, was deemed mentally unfit. In fact, if he's deemed mentally unfit, and he was waterboarded 83 times, what he did Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is, and he was waterboarded what, 182 times?
83.
Like that? Yeah, 183 times. Darin, I mean,
Well, they don't get into everything. I mean, they did they did the nudity, like I said. They did the walling where they slam against a wall.
yes, yeah.
The slapping, whatever. Waterboarding is torture. Don't care what people say. If you get waterboarded, it's a sensation of drowning. You can die from waterboarding. If water gets into your lungs too much, it can cause your lungs to bleed, and that will cause internal bleeding. It is dangerous. They also did rectal feedings for rehydration. They tortured these guys to the point where I don't know how someone who survived even can go on with life, and listen, I'm not a sympathizer, but at the same time, no, we don't torture. That's not what we do, and that's a shame. It's a shame on our country for doing that, because if you go back to Sufan, and I bring it up again, he was getting valuable information without torture, and these guys decided to come in and just go balls to the wall and just humiliate and torture these guys to the point where, how do you even know what's valuable information? To get somebody to stop torturing you, they're going to tell you what they want, and and it's not valuable information. Like KSM, he either told them lies or he told them stuff they already knew. They even said they couldn't break him. They said, I think Justin and Mitchell said he was one of the toughest guys. They waterboarded him 183 times. I don't know how he survived that. To be honest with you, I don't know how he's alive today.
I don't know how he did it.
The objective is to let him know that there's a new sheriff in town, and that he better pay attention.
You also employed stress techniques.
There was a technique where the detainee would sit on the floor and would raise his hands over his head.
In other words, he had to hold his hands up there forever and ever, right?
Well, forever and ever. I was thinking about this the other day. The objective was to induce muscle fatigue. That and most people who work out do a lot more
Are
fatiguing
you
of their
saying
muscles.
this was like going to the gym?
A little different.
Yeah.
Because
Central to the interrogation
different.
was sleep
Really?
deprivation. Abu Zubaydah was kept awake for 3 straight
Wait
days.
to hear this one right here. This is a
sleep
good one.
deprivation works, and I'm sure, Leslie, with all the traveling that you do, that you have suffered from jet lag, and when you don't get good night's sleep for 2 or 3 days, it's very hard.
Now, you don't really mean to suggest that it's like jet lag. I mean, you make it sound like it's benign when you say stuff like that.
Well, I mean, the
And you
feeling.
go into the gym and jet lag.
Well, the feeling
What?
that you get when you don't sleep.
But I mean, these
Adam,
were
real quick,
enhanced
just
interrogation
real quick.
techniques.
Sure.
Other people.
So Leslie Stahl did a good job in his interview. She really
Yeah, she
pressed
did.
him.
You
She
did a
did.
little
Okay. For him to compare sleep deprivation for days on days to jet lag is probably the stupidest thing I ever heard in my life.
I know.
Like, I don't know if he thinks we're stupid or dumb or naive. When I heard that, I had water in my mouth. I almost spit it out from laughing because this is the stupidest freaking thing I've ever heard of, Adam. Sleep deprivation. If you don't sleep, for let's say you get mandated from work. You have work a 16-hour shift. You come home and you are exhausted. You could have a headache. You could be irritable. You imagine not sleeping for 72 hours or more. They did. I heard. Did they do Zubaydah for almost 7 days straight? They
7
did.
straight days.
That is unreal. You
Probably
talk
Sheikh
about,
Mohammed, they did that too.
and
Seven?
and this asshole is comparing it to jet lag. See this? You see the disconnect here?
Oh.
Unreal.
I've interviewed, you well know that I've interviewed Mohammed Al-Sly. He's a former Guantanamo
Yes. Mhm.
detainee. And
Yeah, great interview. Yes.
Mansour EP is another former detainee. And they told me that they would come in periodically in their cages in Guantanamo and basically just wake them up in the middle of the night just for nothing. And this is like away from the CIA's black sites. So this torture didn't even stop with the CIA black sites. It kept going at Guantanamo. So can you imagine? Muhammad al-Sly was there for 17 years. I mean, I can only imagine. I really can't. But
No,
man,
you
for
can't.
this guy to basically say it's jet lag, yeah, brother, yeah.
People call it
I
torture.
don't know what
This
to tell you.
this wasn't benign in any sense of the word.
I'm not trying to say that they were benign. But the problem is that people don't understand that this program was not about hurting anybody. This program was about instilling a sense of hopelessness and despair on the terrorist, on the detainee, so that he would conclude on his own that he was better off cooperating with us.
He says
that's
once
right.
Abu Zubaydah became compliant, the harsh treatment stopped, and he became a fountain of information. But the FBI interrogators remember it differently.
In fact, what they say is everything important that he gave up to them before the harsher interrogation techniques kicked in.
Well, that is just not true. It is not true.
Well, now they say
There's
that.
there's
You
another
say it's
lie.
not true. What am I supposed to think? I don't know.
The FBI and CIA disagree, and it's impossible for us to resolve the argument because details of the interrogations remain classified. But what about the fact that detainees will say
Right now,
anything?
listen. This was just for the audience to say. This interview came out in 2012. The Senate Intelligence report came out in 2016, where I
Mhm.
showed you a part of Abu
Yeah.
Zubaydah. And later came out that Jose Rodriguez was freaking lying about the whole
Yeah.
thing,
He,
and basically
he
just
like
basically said that the reason to implement these these measures was to basically break them psychologically, but the report found out it was basically also to break them physically. In fact, many of
Yes.
these prisoners suffered broken bones, broken jaws,
Yes.
broken eye sockets. One prisoner, Hamid,
prolapse rectums. Ray.
Gul
Yeah,
Rahman, thank you. Gul
yep.
Rahman was killed. He died.
Yeah,
He
Gul
froze
Rahman.
to death.
He was killed in Afghanistan at the salt pit.
That's right.
He froze to death.
He froze.
They threw cold water on him, and he died of hypothermia.
That's
And
right.
guess what? Nothing happened.
No.
Nobody was charged.
In fact, his family never even got the remains of his body. That's
No,
how bad.
and this is how the Daniel Jones, the Senate staffer for Dianne Feinstein in the report, the movie, this is how he got wind of it. Gul Rahman, who died. And this is how this all came about. And yeah, they should name this 60 Minutes Jose Rodriguez lying through the whole interview because that's what he did. He basically lied through the whole interview.
Dude, I was just going to say we're halfway through. I don't know how many lies he put.
At least 10.
Pain. Here's something that was told to me. Abu Zubaydah's story sent the CIA around the globe. Not a single plot was foiled. We spent millions chasing phantoms.
He was a roadmap.
Wait a minute. He's telling his own inspector general that he's lying. From the inspector general, the CIA wrote a report saying, yeah, these guys never, not once. And by the way, again, this was coming out in 2012. 4 years later, Senate intelligence report came out and said not one terrorist attack was ever stopped from information gathered for these people, because most of the stuff that they were talking about was false, was lies, for them to stop the fucking torture.
Yep.
That allowed us to capture a bunch of Al-Qaeda senior leaders.
Who?
Among those leaders, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Details of his interrogation
That's a lie.
and what he told the CIA about Osama bin Laden next.
This is the second half right here. So this guy, Darin, my God, he's a prolific liar, but he has to, right? Can't just come out and, tell the truth.
That's what the CIA does. They lie.
They had the use of a fleet of special aircraft to spirit detainees to its web of black sites across the globe. They were knocked out with sedatives during the flights, and upon arrival had their heads and beards shaved, and they were placed in sterile underground cells with only an arrow painted on the floor pointing to Mecca. In total, the CIA picked up about 100 detainees, subjected 75 of them to harsh interrogation techniques, 3 of them to waterboarding, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, or KSM, the mastermind of 9/11. When KSM was first captured in 2003, he was in no mood to talk.
The story will continue.
Just to add, also, the Senate Select Committee Intelligence Report basically said that the CIA was going to torture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed even before he was sent to detention site Blue. I think detention site Blue. Oh no, I'm sorry, Cobalt. There's another site that he went to.
Yeah, KSM was pretty much screwed before.
He was definitely.
You in the moment.
Yeah,
exactly. Pretty much fucked.
Oh, he was not going to talk. I mean, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is one of the toughest killers out there.
I heard he was brilliant.
He was brilliant. He was scary smart, but he's also evil, and he will use that intelligence to find different ways of coming after us.
He says that in the beginning, KSM would respond to questions by reciting verses from the Koran.
He eventually told us, well, look, I will talk once I get to New York and I get my lawyer.
Oh,
He knew that if he got into the criminal process in the U.S., that he would get a lawyer and he would use that forum.
He'd use it as a platform for his ideology.
Oh, wait a minute. You mean legally retain counsel? Like what the laws basically say here? This is another reason why the CIA didn't want them to be tried at the Southern District of New York, Darin, was that because they knew, I mean, the only reason why I would think so is that they knew they had little evidence regarding, their logistical and financial support to these hijackers or whatnot. Now, I don't know what they have or didn't have. Now, I'm not going to sit here down with you and speculate what the CIA did have or didn't have. Maybe they hid some information from the FBI, which they did anyway. I mean, a number of variables could be playing out here. But one thing is certain, you didn't have to torture Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Darin. If you remember, he actually gave an interview before he was captured, along with Ramzi bin al-Shib.
Yeah, yep.
Yom Shri Fuda.
Yeah, there's a book on it, The Masters
Yeah,
Masterminds of Terrorism.
yeah. And they spoke about gleefully about what they did. This before they were captured. And a lot of people don't remember this. Now, I've also interviewed the co-author of that book, Nick Fielding, who's
Yes. Nick Fielding,
Yoshi
yep.
Fuda. And he basically said that Yoshi Fuda was invited to speak, invited to an interview of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in a Al Qaeda guest house in Pakistan, in which he had to go through a number of different,
Mhm.
cabs and streets and whatnot, whatever. And yeah, they set up an interview and they talked about what they did. And Yoshi Fuda said basically they admitted to 9/11 and they showed him, all these
Yep.
plans for it and whatever. If he's willing to talk to a fucking Al Jazeera reporter, Darren, I think he's willing to talk. But
Yeah.
why would the CIA say otherwise? I don't know.
Well,
But
because they're complicit. That's why, and it goes back to withholding information, and we talk about it blue in the face at them about the Malaysian summit meeting that the Wafa Hazmi Khalil Madar being in the States, and that information was not fucking passed, and it pisses me off to this day because if that information is passed, I think there's a good chance they can either stop the operation or delay it or somehow get more information to keep it from happening. That's the problem that people don't understand. They're too busy talking about stupid buildings and controlled demolition. We have complicit activity within the CIA, and yet we don't talk about it. We don't. There's only a few people that talk about it. And this is your malfeasance, Adam. I don't know how many times we have to just keep repeating ourselves, but you have it right here. Right here. You have it. You talk about information not being passed to stop the worst terrorist attack that we've ever seen. And yet, here we are. We talk about buildings. It's unreal, man.
don't get me started.
He would use it as a platform.
Faced with KSM's obstinance, CIA interrogators began ratcheting up the severity of the questioning step by step.
Did you make him wear diapers?
Diapers, I don't recall it specifically to him, but diapers is something that is approved.
So
It's
humiliating.
It's standard, yeah.
According to an internal investigation by the CIA's own Inspector General, this is a heavily redacted, declassified copy. KSM was denied sleep for 180 hours in a row, or about 7.5 days.
Wow.
And still,
That's
he
crazy.
didn't quit.
He was the toughest detainee that we had, no doubt.
So he was subjected to waterboarding, specifically 183 pourings
The
of water.
toughness meaning that you went overboard on this guy, knowing who he was. It's not like he was holding out. You broke this motherfucker.
In about half a dozen separate sessions. Rodriguez said the average pour lasted 10 seconds.
Which
Can
is a
I say
lie.
something about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed? He's the one that was responsible for the death of Danny Pearl, the Wall Street reporter. He slit his throat in front of the
Hey, Adam, just real quick.
I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so just so we want to get things straight, KSM is a terrible human being. He's a terrorist. He's a murderer. Yes, he should be in prison for the rest of his life. Absolutely. But he wasn't waterboarded for 10 seconds. He was waterboarded over 30 seconds. So that's another lie. It wasn't 10 seconds. And like I said, there's no sympathizing for these terrorists, but they could have got maybe more information on these guys if they didn't torture them. So like I said, again, it's just CIA covering their asses because they screwed up what we talked about before with not passing information.
Yeah, plain and simple. I don't even need to follow.
Man, it takes to cut the throat of someone in front of you like that. But I can tell you that this is an individual who probably didn't give a rat's ass about having water poured on his face.
You never believed for 1 second you were going to kill him.
No. And let me just tell you, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed would use his fingers to count the number of seconds because he knew that in all likelihood we would stop at 10. So this doesn't sound like a person who is afraid of dying.
If he's sitting there counting off, he knows you're not going to kill him, he knows he's not going to drown, then why do it? What's the point?
I think that the cumulative effect of waterboarding and sleep deprivation and everything else that was done eventually got to him.
So what happens? Does he break down? Does he weep? Does he fall apart?
No, he gets a good night's sleep. He gets his insure. By the way, he was very heavy, and when he came to us, and he lost 50 pounds.
This guy's unreal.
Sure, you mean like people in the hospital who drink that stuff?
Yes, dietary manipulation was part of these narrative techniques.
So sleep deprivation, dietary manipulation, I mean, this is Orwellian stuff. The United States doesn't do that.
Well, we do.
Bingo, and there you go.
there we
That's
go.
it, right?
There we go.
That's it. There you have it. So they got authorization from White House legal counsel. They knew it was fucking illegal. They knew that the CIA, all the intelligence services had to know the negative effects of torturing somebody would result in false information. Out of all the agencies in the world, they should know that. So in other words, why did they do it in the first place? I think it goes back to Darin's point that it goes up to the cover-up of withholding information from the FBI and State Department regarding Al-Qaeda being inside the United States, coming from a secret Malaysia meeting, because they were running an illegal operation with Saudi intelligence.
With Saudi Arabia.
Right.
And like I said, it hasn't come out report yet, but they also, and I think you and I agree. I think they're running a legal operation with the Mossad back out east too. So
yeah,
I know.
Yeah, that's a touchy subject because that's the Gerald J. memorandum you're talking about, right? Yeah.
Question is whether the information they got from KSM was truthful and helpful. In his report, the CIA's Inspector General says that the CIA's Office of Medical Services concluded that when it came to the waterboarding,
there was no reason to think that it had been effective or that it was safe.
The CIA's Inspector General.
This is your own Inspector General.
Well, our own Inspector General, in many cases, did very sloppy work. That report is flawed in many different ways.
Why would they make it up?
I don't know if it's made up. I don't know if there were advocates. The Inspector General himself, he was opposed to this. But this was the policy. He was wrong.
But many of the tips from detainees reportedly led to blind alleys and expensive wild goose chases. Rodriguez maintains that the information from KSM and the other detainees enabled the CIA to disrupt at least 10 large-scale terrorist plots.
Would the plots have been stopped without the harsh interrogation techniques? In other words, could it have happened without waterboarding?
I can't answer that question, perhaps, but the issue here was timing. We needed information, and we needed...
Okay, let me tell you two plots that was named in the Senate Select report, Darin. One was the Heathrow airport bombing, and the other was a Karachi plot in Pakistan. By the way, the report basically says information actually came from informants and other individuals other than the torture of these detainees. In fact, the Senate report was quite adamant, stating that no information, not one bit of information from the torture of detainees resulted in the stopping of any terrorist plot. Again, Darin, another lie.
Another lie.
Jose.
Right away to protect the homeland.
You told us that the whole rationale, justification for the whole interrogation program was to stop an imminent attack. The Inspector General says it didn't stop any imminent attack.
I submit to you that we don't know. We don't know if, for example, Al-Qaeda would have been able to continue on with their anthrax program or a nuclear program or the second wave of attacks or the sleeper agents that they had inside the United States that were working with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed to take down the Brooklyn Bridge, for example. So it's easy years later to say, well,
hey, by the way, he's talking about Raid Hijazi in the Boston cell too. That's
the guy, the Millennium Plot guy.
Yeah, Nabil
Marab. Yeah.
No, thank you, Marab. Thank you very much.
Time bomb, nothing was stopped.
But the truth is about Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, you really didn't break him.
Why you say
well,
that?
He didn't tell you about Osama bin Laden. He didn't tell you how to get him. He didn't tell you how to find him.
Good point.
We're not going to tell us everything.
So you don't break them. And they told you lies.
There is a limit to what they will tell us.
Actually, KSM lied about the courier, whose identity finally led to the compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, where the terrorist leader he calls Sheikh bin Laden was hiding.
Now, here's what I had heard, that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed told you the courier had retired and he threw you off the scent for a while.
That was the one secret he was going to take to the grave, and that was the protection of the sheikh.
He's going to take
He
many.
was not going to tell
He
us.
took many. Yeah,
One
he
of
didn't
the
tell you
secrets
shit.
Rodriguez
Tell
had
you
hoped to
shit.
take to his grave was exposed in 2007. The CIA had videotaped the
Yep.
interrogation of 2 of its detainees, including Abu Zubaydah.
The reason why we taped Abu Zubaydah was because he was very wounded when he was captured, and we feared that he was going to die in captivity. So we wanted to show the world that we actually had nothing to do with his death. That he died on his own.
How nice of you,
Wait a
Jose.
minute.
Hey, Jose, how nice of you, buddy.
Oh my God! First of all, they destroyed the tapes because the word got out that hey, CIA is taping the torture of Abu Zubaydah, and when
Was it
State
88
Department
videos of
officials
them?
heard, yeah, that's right. And
Yeah.
by the way, when they heard about it, they said we want to see those tapes. This guy went to the lawyers of the CIA and said, "Hey, what's the legal recourse of destroying these tapes?" That's what he did.
You wanted to
Stand-up
have a
guy.
video record that he was being well treated, but in the end, they became a video record that he'd been subjected to these harsh techniques.
Yeah, we weren't hiding anything.
Yeah,
But you then
Yeah, you
ordered
were.
tapes
you
destroyed.
were.
Correct. 92 tapes
92 tapes. Why did you order that they be destroyed?
to protect the people who worked for me and who were at the
Lying bastard. You only destroyed those tapes because you knew that the interrogation methods that you used in those
Used
tapes
were
were
illegal.
illegal.
Mhm.
And they didn't want to get this in the hands of who? Lawyers in the future for Abu Zubaydah, right? Which came out in the Lithuania case when he was tortured. It's one of the black sites he was tortured at. And that came a huge case because the government of Lithuania is being sued by who? Abu Zubaydah, that he's talking about here. Now, at the same time, he said that, yes, they were actually videotaping these tortures. So guess what? Hey, we want to see these tapes. What did we do?
those black sites and whose faces were shown on the tape.
Protect them from what?
Protect them from Al Qaeda ever getting their hands on this tape
That makes no
and
sense, dude.
using them to go
Ow.
after them and their families.
He was also worried about the very survival of the CIA's dark side, the clandestine service, because of the so-called Abu Ghraib effect.
Yeah.
I was concerned that the distinction between a legally authorized program, as our enhanced interrogation program was, and illegal activity by a bunch of psychopaths would not be made.
He says that CIA lawyers repeatedly asked the White House, Justice Department, and Vice President Cheney's office for permission to shred the tapes.
By the way,
But
all those institutions that they're talking about were the primary architects of the
Yep.
torture program.
Of the torture program,
Nobody
yeah.
was making a decision to proceed.
So one day you just said, the hell with it. I have this authority. I'm going to do it.
One day I finally called in my advisors and lawyers and say, tell me, okay, tell me again that this is legal, and tell me that I have the authority to do this. When the answer I received was yes and yes, then I said, well, I am going to make this decision and do it myself.
Boom, they were destroyed.
Yes.
they were destroyed in an industrial strength shredder.
Well, here's what you write in your book. You took the president's, the vice president's silence on this to mean they were really relieved that you had taken this on yourself and had done it. That's what you write.
Correct.
There are people who feel that you did it as a cover-up.
Everything that was on those tapes were authorized activities by the U.S. government. So there was nothing to cover up.
Yet after
Yes,
the
it was. In fact, you damn well knew that even with the authorization of White House legal counsel, it was still against international law. Now, Darin,
Yep.
Malaysia is the only country right now that still has an open warrant for George Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, General Myers, John Yu, Alberto Gonzalez for what? For authorizing the enhanced interrogation techniques
As they should.
on individuals. By the way, those warrants are still out there, even though Rumsfeld's dead, so that doesn't mean anything much, right? But the warrants are still out. They can never travel to Malaysia because they'll be arrested.
Story broke in the newspapers, the Justice Department launched a criminal investigation. Ultimately, Rodriguez was cleared of any criminal wrongdoing. By then, the CIA's Inspector General's report was partly declassified, detailing some of the program's excesses.
Mock executions? People threatened with power drills?
Yes.
People told that you were going to go and hurt their children, rape their wives?
Stupid things that were done by people who had no authority to do that.
And they just took it on themselves.
Correct. And we found out about it, and we self-reported and actually called in the IG and said, you better take a look at what these people did and do what you need to do.
You have some people out there who were taken to black sites. They were subjected to terrible treatment. They hadn't done anything. I mean, they were taken mistakenly. They disappeared. What about them?
No doubt when you are involved in complicated covert action programs like this one, that some mistakes will be made.
Rodriguez retired
Some
from
mistakes,
Some
right?
mistakes.
Like Mohammed Al Slahi, 17 years in detention for a crime he didn't commit. By the way, Abu Zubaydah, the guy he spoke about earlier, not charged with a single crime. In fact, in 2009, at his military tribunal hearing in Guantanamo, Darin, the CIA even admitted that Abu Zubaydah was not just a fighter. He wasn't even Al-Qaeda.
He was an
And
Al
that's
Qaeda.
true.
No.
Right, it's true. He never swore by loyalty to bin Laden.
No.
Anyway, what was the torture? Why are they holding him in Guantanamo as a forever detainee? Because that was part of the White House legal counsel's memorandum, was that because they're too dangerous. No, the hidden fact of that was that he's going to tell the world what they did to him.
What they did to him,
That's
yeah.
what they did. That's what they told Hambali, Ridwan Ismail, the bomber of Indonesia from Jebel Islamiyah. CIA told him, we can never release you because of what we did to you.
Right.
So that's why they won't release him.
CIA in January 2008. He has spent the last year writing his book, published by the CBS company Simon & Schuster. In the book, he says that by canceling the interrogation program, President Obama has tied the government's hands in the war on terror.
We don't capture anybody anymore, Leslie. I mean, their default option of this administration has been to kill all prisoners, take no prisoners.
The drones.
The drones. How can it be more ethical to kill people rather than capture them? I've never understood that one.
President Obama
This guy.
what we did was torture.
Well, President Obama is entitled to his opinion.
It's not
When
opinion.
It was torture, buddy.
condemns
God, Darin, my
the
God.
covert action activities of a previous government, he is breaking the covenant that exists between intelligence officers who are at the pointy end of the spear hanging way out there and the government that authorized them and directed them to go there.
John McCain, a huge critic of this program. He had been tortured, so we know where he's coming from. Here's what he said. It's killing us, that America will sink to the level of its worst enemies. We forfeited our values, he said. And I guess what I want to ask is, didn't it actually change who we are, what we think we're about? I mean, we think we're the country that doesn't do that, right?
I am very secure in what we did, and I am very confident that what we did saved American lives.
Not one.
This
Not one.
Tuesday is the
Yeah.
one-year anniversary
Lies.
of the U.S. Special Forces raid that resulted in the death of Osama bin Laden.
And that's
Go to 60minutesovertime.com.
yeah.
to hear
How
more
about
the
that
reporting
for
of
a presentation? Darin, that guy was lying straight from the start.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to go over this. He lied from the first 30 seconds all the way to the end. So yeah, it's a good thing to know as a 9/11 researcher. And you can tie this all the way back to the information being withheld from the FBI. So this all ties in together perfectly, just like '93 World Trade Center bombing and September 11th. They all tie in, and this ties in as well. So in your research, I think this is a good thing to know.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, look, it doesn't just end on 9/11. Your research, it even
Mhm.
extends into after it because everything's a ripple effect from 9/11,
Exactly.
including the
Yep.
torture program,
Yep.
and we're experiencing to the very day. That's why 9/11 is a very unique event in history.
It
Unlike
is.
JFK or World War II,
Mhm.
9/11 that extends to the present day. Everything
To
we're
the present
living
day.
under is from the effects of September 11, 2001, which makes it for a fascinating study. And the reason why people such as yourself are very valuable to the public because we still are bringing relevant information even to the present
Mhm.
day that are still coming out
Sure.
being declassified.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely.
the planes crashing didn't mean that 9/11 ended. It's still
No,
continuing because of information that could be gleaned many years later.
absolutely.
You have any parting thoughts, Darren?
What's that? I'm sorry.
You have any parting thoughts like at the
Uh,
end?
yeah, just like I said, I just torture. We don't do that, and they did it to the fullest extent they could. Like I said, these it didn't it didn't save the lives like Jose Rodriguez was saying.
Hmm.
Okay, they didn't get much at all, if anything, from these guys. Like I said, KSM basically said the same thing they already knew when he lied to them. They weren't getting anything more. So what they kept doing, they just kept waterboarding him. And like Leslie Stahl said, what was the point? If he wasn't talking, why did you just keep doing it? Just like I said, I want to go back to the FBI and the CIA withholding information to the FBI. More lies, 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 lies. And like I said, Jose Rodriguez lied through the whole interview. I don't know if he said anything truthful at all. If he did, I missed it. um,
I didn't see anything.
and the sad part about 9/11 too is I know a lot of researchers talk about this, is nobody was held accountable.
Hmm.
Jose Rodriguez wasn't held accountable. Um, George Tenet wasn't held accountable. All the Cofer Black, Richard Bleed, these guys were not held accountable. They were either promoted or they stayed in the same position. And that's the problem I had with 9/11 more than anything, is that nobody was held accountable for all the innocent people that died that day. Um, it's very saddening to know that there's the families out there still haven't really got justice at them. There hasn't been that
Hmm.
closure to it because people weren't held accountable. And I'm not talking about Al Qaeda or these other terrorist groups that we think were involved. It's our homegrown people here who was paid and dedicated to protect us, and they failed miserably. Um, and it could have been very well prevented if they just worked together, shared the information when they knew it, instead of fighting over who the turf war and who's going to get the glory. And George Tenet, like I said, when he said when Stu found was getting information from Zubaydah, they rushed right in there, get the hell out of there. No, that's our guys. And that's what happened with the information. It's the same thing. Um, the same type of thing happened. They didn't want to share information, and look what happened. And unfortunately, people lost their lives that day.
Yeah, and look, just to follow up a little bit on that, there's not much to follow up there. You said just about what I wanted to say.
Mhm.
But I mean, at this point, what we wanted to show to public is that by doing these collab sessions is basically revisit the failures leading up to 9/11 and even after 9/11.
Yeah.
Basically because a lot of this stuff is covered up by the government, the media, and fringe conspiracy theorists and whatnot. And by doing these sessions here, we're basically providing our own thoughts and what
Mhm.
we've learned over the years, along with the information presented in these interviews by 60 Minutes, and we'll extend on to it. So in another 2 weeks, we'll do another
Yeah.
collab session. We don't know what it's going to be. Who
Nope.
knows? We'll surprise you when it happens. And if so, see you guys in 2 weeks. Darren, have a good rest of your day, brother.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Adam. Thank you.
Take care.